Hi, all. Thank you all for being here tonight. We really appreciate your time. This is our pitch for you guys. My name is Kennedy Hawkins.
My name is Ben Dobbins.
My name is Ryan Seltzer.
I'm Dan Shu.
I'm Celia Johnson.
All right, so let's just get started. So first, we're just going to talk a little bit about like what we see, like the problem or the issue is that you guys really want to get tackled into.
All right, so the Toy Foundation's mission, according to the website, is to be the uniting force for collective philanthropy of the industry for the benefit of all children in need. And so the questions we specifically were trying to answer is what is impactful in the different intersections of philanthropy, social responsibility, and diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how to market effectively, particularly through social media.
So just to give a little bit of background, we're just going to talk a little bit about autism.
Autism spectrum disorder, also known as ASD, is a neurodevelopment disorder that affects how those diagnosed behave, interact with others, learn, and communicate. And symptoms are usually apparent by 2 years of age. There's no blood tests that can be done or things in that nature. So it's just as doctors see kind of how children interact with others and behave is how they diagnose it. Autism rates have risen by nearly 150% since 2000, which is visible in the chart there. And currently it's about 1 in 44 children have autism today. It's known to affect all racial groups and socioeconomic groups, so it doesn't really target specific people. Those with autism have different levels of ability, functioning, and severity of symptoms. They may react differently to sound, noises, things of that nature. And there are resources and exposure that help minimize the severity of symptoms, such as ABA therapy, sensory enrichment therapy, speech and language therapy, and the TEACH program.
While we just shared some really bad news, I do like to point out that there are a ton of current successes. Some of the names you might recognize already from the Toy Foundation. I believe we recently reached out to Pamela, and she was kind enough to provide these resources to us, so we appreciate that. But here you can see, and on the next slide as well, all of these different hospitals and medical institutions have provided some sort of sensory based assistant towards children. You can see the keywords like sensory playroom or sensory toys, sensory carts, and there's also some on the next slide as well. But at the end of the day, research and the surveys that they did have shown that there is a huge, tremendous success in terms of tackling negative emotions like fear, anxiety, and stress, and helps the kids feel better in a environment that one might not do so necessarily.
So a little bit about what the toy that we're going to propose to you guys. So I'm going to call it the emotion toy tonight. Our specific idea is creating an interactive doll for children or adults with autism. The doll specifically will have push buttons in the middle of its chest to provoke an emotional response. For example, on your chest, if it says sad, the doll will say sad and it'll make a sad face. That thus teaching the child what the sad emotion is. It exposes children at an earlier age to emotions, and it helps them understand how to respond to certain social cues and emotions, because kids with autism do struggle with those things. Obviously, with the buttons on the chest, it's going to include the most important and relevant emotions. We had the privilege of talking to someone within the Smith School of Business. Her child has autism, and the 5 emotions that she said that they see a lot with children with autism are happy, sad, angry, tired, bored, or serious. So they have a hard time really adapting to those emotions. So those would be the most important emotions on the toy. So this just kind of gives a mashup of what we kind of are envisioning for the toy. So on the left or your right, not 100% sure, you see like a robot and it has like buttons in it. And on the other side, you see like the octopi with the different ranges of emotion. So we're gonna potentially, because there's no real doll out there, kind of trying to mash up the two to make it more interactive for the child, whether it's a child or an adult, and just something that they can always have throughout their life. So one of the things that we wanted to try and do with this toy was to, if the product does go forward, we would look to test the product in different areas and regions. Thus, we could then make modifications. So for example, Hasbro does have the Fun Lab in Connecticut. And so the research test facility observes children's reactions to different and potential concepts. So for our particular toy, we would have all different ranges of the autism spectrum, because age is not necessarily always a factor, because it is a cognitive disorder, so age can be relative at times. And then from the results, we'll be able to determine like how we can modify the toy.
All right, so on the educational front with this toy, public schools would be a huge market for this toy because they're required already to have speech therapists and support for children with different needs. But the problem is that these therapists and these special education teachers are often working with a ton of students. And so they don't necessarily always have a large amount of time to dedicate to every single student. And so these students are not receiving all of the help that they may need to develop with their different needs. This doll would be able to work alongside these therapists and teachers to help these children develop the ability to read social cues. And it would help them via the exposure to this toy. Since they're required to provide assistance for children at all levels of schooling, the idea would there would be a series of toys to help with different issues at different stages of development for people with autism. And so a school system perhaps would have all of the different toys in the series to be able to help all different levels of the students that attend their institutions. And this would help to lift the burden off the overworked school workers who have to have to assist, 40 plus students, all with different kind of needs that they necessarily can't give the most amount of care to every single one. And so often parents will put their child in a program called ABA, which is a therapy program that the professor we spoke to used with her son. But this is very expensive, and often parents who don't have the ability to do that, their child won't receive the same amount of care as someone who can. So this toy would help to bridge that gap for low-income children because they're required to go to public school, and if a public school was able to provide them the assistance they need to develop their social skills, they would have a much easier time later on in life.
So one of the coolest things about this toy is how versatile it is, meaning that it can be used in a therapeutic sense and it can also be used just as a toy. So as Ryan was just saying, you could market this to schools and they could use it in their special needs classes to help kids kind of get along there. As Dan mentioned earlier, there's some successes in the medical industry for it. So you could market it to hospitals. They could use it for sensory playrooms for children there. And one of the things that we learned from the professor that we spoke to was that a lot of the way that these parents of autistic children kind of learn about different toys that could be used for their kids is by word of mouth. So we thought that a great way to market this would be through online forums and groups for parents of autistic children, most likely on Facebook or other social media platforms like that.
We were thinking about potentially partnering with many different foundations that focus on supporting the research of autism and how to minimize the severity of symptoms that children have. So there's Autism Speaks, the Autism Research Foundation, as well as Autism Society of America. And then the last one, we were thinking about college fraternities and sororities. Here at UMD, Alpha Z Delta has been working with Autism Speak since 2009, and they've raised $8 million for autism advocacy. And I think that's a great way to kind of bridge higher level education with those that are starting at the elementary level and kind of bring them together in trying to solve this problem.
So next we're just going to talk a little bit about alignment, the impact, and the next steps for you guys.
So in terms of alignment with the Toy Foundation, providing toys to children in need is one of you guys' core area of focus, and there's no limit to those who need help. And so our goal is to, by creating this toy, that deals with autism, it not only aligns with your guys' goal, but it also ensures that everyone in the world has what they need in order to thrive. And lastly, our toy holds the Toy Foundation accountable for its commitment in helping in the best way possible.
So I just want to wrap this up a little bit by talking about how this toy could impact your organization business-wise, and also how it could have a societal impact. So first off, inclusivity, obviously that's a big one. And this toy really it pushes that because it allows all kids to have toys that are meant for them, no matter what disabilities they might have. It helps include everybody in that. And then as far as marketing is concerned, there's a big market for this. There's not many toys out there right now that are focused on sensory development towards autistic kids. So we really feel like there's a big market for this, and you can make a lot of money selling to schools, hospitals, and retail, as I mentioned earlier. And then overall education, this really, whether it's an autistic kid using this or a non-autistic kid, it teaches kids about emotions. And that's really at the heart of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's really the most important part of it, is responding to emotions and understanding other people's emotions. And this toy really targets that. So we feel like that would be a great thing for you.
Thank you. Any questions?
That's awesome. That was great. Thanks, guys.